Victor. Go pour everyone some water. Celia Shaw's voice rang through the conference room. Crisp and clean. Carrying the kind of authority that allowed no refusal. She had just been helped into the main seat by Ryan Holt. Her fingertips still resting on his forearm. Today was both the celebration of Ascenteca's successful Series B funding and a strategic planning meeting. Celia wore a champagne-colored suit. Her makeup flawless. Not a strand of hair out of place. Ryan stood behind her chair. White shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Tall and straight. With a perfectly measured smile on his face. The entire room. Shareholders. Senior executives. Investor representatives. Turned their eyes toward me. I sat near the door. A notebook open in front of me. The pages were blank. My seat was the farthest from the projector. And the closest to the beverage counter. The matters being discussed here, Celia said, lifting her coffee and taking a sip without even looking at me. You won't understand anyway. Don't just sit there. Ryan let out a low laugh. It was not loud, but loud enough for the people nearby to hear. There was no obvious malice in that laugh. Only amusement. Like he was watching an old acquaintance who was not quite bright. Several executives exchanged looks. Someone lowered his head and swiped his phone. Someone lifted his glass to hide the awkwardness. On the investor side, a young man wearing glasses curled his lip and turned his face away. The air froze. I closed my notebook. The plastic cover made a soft click. I did not move. Celia waited for a moment. When she heard nothing, her brows tightened almost imperceptibly. Finally, she lifted her eyes and looked at me. Victor. I did not look at her. I stood. The chair legs scraped across the floor with an unpleasant sound. But I did not walk toward the beverage counter. I walked straight toward the projector at the front of the room. My steps were unhurried. My leather shoes sank into the thick carpet without a sound. Victor. Ryan spoke first. His tone carrying confusion and a faint trace of alertness. Celia asked you to pour water. I ignored him. I walked to the projector. Bent down. And took a black USB drive from my pocket. Small. Metal. Cold against my fingers. What are you doing? Celia's tone rose. Impatience clear in her voice. We're in a meeting. Stop making trouble. I plugged the USB drive into the port. The projector screen lit up and displayed a source menu. I picked up the remote and pressed twice. The screen went dark. Then it lit again. A complex chart appeared. Lines. Boxes. Arrows. Layers nested inside layers. At the top was a bold English abbreviation. Below it was the Chinese company name. Further down were dense ownership percentages. The conference room fell silent for a second. Everyone stared at the screen. Blank-faced. Celia also looked at it. The impatience on her face froze, gradually turning into confusion. She leaned forward slightly and narrowed her eyes, trying to make out the small text. Ryan leaned close to her ear and whispered something. Victor. Celia said coldly, warning in her tone. Where did you get this? Forging a company ownership structure is illegal. Do you understand that? Turn it off. Now. I turned around. The glowing screen was behind me. The entire conference room was in front of me. My gaze moved across face after face. Confused. Entertained. Dismissive. Finally, it stopped on Celia. Her eye makeup was perfect. Her eyeliner drawn with practiced precision. But now those eyes were filled with irritation and a trace of offended anger. Ryan stood slightly behind her. His arms crossed. The smile gone from his mouth. His eyes had darkened. I lifted my hand and pointed toward the top of the screen. At the anonymous shareholder written in the largest font. Halemark Capital Offshore Trust nominee. Ms. Shaw. I said. My voice was not loud. But the room was too quiet. So every word landed clearly. Please ask this Assistant Holt beside you to leave this conference room within 3 minutes. Celia froze. Ryan froze too. Someone below sucked in a breath. Otherwise, I continued evenly, as if reading from a schedule. This shareholder will immediately initiate the withdrawal procedure. In full. Dead silence. 4-5 full seconds. No one spoke. Then Celia laughed. A short, sharp laugh. As if she had heard the greatest joke in the world. She leaned back in her chair and shook her head. On that delicately made-up face were absurdity and disappointment. Victor. Are you insane? Her voice was laughing. But the laugh was ice-cold. Do you even know who Halemark Capital is? That is our largest investor. Anonymous Holding. Even I have only dealt with their entrusted attorneys a few times. You downloaded some random chart from somewhere. And now you dare come here spouting nonsense. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Her fingernail tapped the table. Tap. 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 Withdraw funds. Who do you think you are? Why would they listen to you? Because you're my husband and cooked for me at home for 3 years. Her tone rose. The humiliation obvious. Let me tell you something. The company reached today because I, Celia Shaw, led this team and fought day and night for it. It has nothing to do with you. Victor Hale. Not 1 cent. Ryan recovered as well. That mixed smile of sympathy and superiority returned to his face. He stepped forward slightly, as if to smooth things over. Victor. Calm down. His tone was sincere. I know it hasn't been easy for you these past few years at home. I understand the gap in your heart. But this is a company strategy meeting, not a place to throw a tantrum. Celia is under a lot of pressure for the company. Maybe she spoke a little harshly. Don't take it personally. He paused. His smile deepened, showing clean white teeth. And besides, Celia's company really doesn't have much to do with you. Right. You can't just make up something like this because you feel upset. That hurts everyone's feelings. Whispers rose below. Is Ms. Shaw's husband having a breakdown? I heard he never worked. Just lived off her. Men. Their pride can't take it. This is so embarrassing. Several older shareholders shook their heads, looking at me as if I were a child who did not understand manners. The investor representatives whispered among themselves. The young man with glasses even laughed quietly and lifted his phone to take a photo of the screen, as if collecting gossip. Celia listened to the murmurs. Her expression eased slightly, but her eyes became colder. She looked at me like I was a stranger, a problem who had made her lose face. Victor, she said through suppressed anger, word by word. Right now. Get out. Stop humiliating yourself here. Go home. We'll talk about our matters tonight. I did not move. I lifted my wrist and glanced at my watch. 2 minutes and 10 seconds left. I said. Celia's face darkened completely. You are completely unreasonable. She slammed the table and stood. Security. Call security in. At the door. Her secretary Paige peered in. Panic on her face. Not daring to move. Celia. I interrupted her. Still in that flat tone. There isn't much time. You really have lost your mind. She was so angry her chest rose and fell. She pointed at me. Fine. Fine. Didn't you say 3 minutes? I'll wait. I want to see what happens after 3 minutes. Ryan. Sit down. Don't go anywhere. Today. I want to see what kind of trick he can perform. Ryan shrugged. He really pulled over a chair and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. Relaxed. Watching the show. The atmosphere in the conference room became extremely strange. No one spoke. But every gaze moved between me, Celia, Ryan, and the complex chart on the projection screen. The air was taut as a drawn bow. The second hand ticked forward. I could hear my own steady breathing. Celia remained standing, both hands braced on the table, eyes locked onto me as if she wanted to burn 2 holes through my body. Ryan occasionally lowered his head to play with his phone. The corner of his mouth always held that faint smile. 1 minute 30 seconds. 1 minute 15 seconds. Some people began checking their watches frequently, growing restless. 50 seconds. 30 seconds. A trace of uncertainty gradually seeped into Celia's anger. Perhaps she was finally realizing I was too calm. Too calm to be bluffing. 10 seconds. 5. 3. 2. 1. Time was up. Nothing happened. Only the low hum of the central air conditioning remained in the conference room. Ryan was the first to laugh. A snort of contempt. Held back for too long and finally released. He shook his head. Stood. And patted non-existent dust from his trousers. Victor. Is the show over? His tone was light. 3 minutes are up. Has Halemark Capital withdrawn? Where's the call? Where's the notice? Nothing happened. He turned to Celia and spread his hands. Celia. I think Victor has just had too much free time lately. He's overthinking things. Maybe security should take him to the lounge to cool off. Celia exhaled. Long and obvious. Her tense shoulders loosened slightly. And then even greater anger and embarrassment at being toyed with surged up. Her face was iron blue. She was about to speak. Bang! The conference room door was knocked open. Not pushed. Knocked open. Celia's secretary Paige stumbled in. Face deathly pale. Lips trembling. Phone still lit in her shaking hand. Her hair was messy. Her chest heaved violently. As if she had run all the way here. Ms. Shaw. Something happened. Her voice carried sobs. Sharp and piercing. Every eye in the room snapped toward her. Celia's rebuke got stuck in her throat. Why are you panicking? What kind of behavior is this? Paige could no longer care about manners. She raised the phone. Tears spilling down her face. The bank. The bank's risk control director Mr. Mason personally called. He said all of our company's main credit lines have been frozen. Disbursements are suspended. All ongoing loan approvals are terminated. What? All color drained from Celia's face. And Paige cried harder. Her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. The front desk just received a courier package. It's an official letter from Halemark Trust. It has their seal on it. It says, as the company's largest shareholder, they demand an emergency board meeting under the agreement terms. She drew a breath. Fear made her words disordered. The agenda is replacing the CEO and initiating the company's asset liquidation procedure. Boom. It was as if something exploded in the room. Everyone. Shareholders. Executives. Investor representatives. Stood up at once. Their faces filled with shock and disbelief. Chairs toppled. Documents fell. Low cries broke out everywhere. Chaos swallowed the room. Celia stood frozen. Not moving at all. Her eyes were wide. Locked on Paige. As if she could not understand what she had just heard. Her lips parted. Her breathing turned rapid. Ryan's smile vanished completely. Replaced by confusion and terror. He looked at Paige. Then Celia. Then suddenly turned toward me. I was still standing beside the projector. My back to the ownership chart that now looked so deeply ironic. Amid the confusion, Celia suddenly came back to herself. Like someone grabbing a life-saving rope. She snatched the phone from Paige and swiped frantically. Her voice was shrill. Phone. Give me the contact for Halemark Trust. I saved it. I'll ask personally. This is impossible. There must be a mistake. She dialed and pressed the phone hard to her ear. Busy tone. She dialed again. Still busy. Sweat appeared on her forehead. Her makeup began to smudge. She kept redialing. Her knuckles white from force. At that moment, the other phone in my trouser pocket vibrated. The buzzing was not obvious in the chaos. But I felt it. I took it out. An old black phone. Outdated model. Small screen. I almost never used it. And it had always been set to silent. Now the screen showed an unsaved number. But I knew who it was. Just as Celia failed to connect again and lifted her head. Looking at me with bloodshot eyes that almost wanted to devour me. I pressed answer. Then I turned on speaker. A calm, clear male voice with no trace of emotion came from the old phone speaker, instantly cutting through the noise. Good morning, Mr. Hale. This is Halemark Trust. Regarding the Ascend Tech Incorporated equity held under your name through this trust. And the withdrawal and liquidation instruction you verbally issued 3 minutes ago. The voice paused. Making sure every word was delivered. The relevant legal documents have been prepared. The liquidation procedure has been officially initiated at your request. Clatter. The delicate ceramic coffee cup printed with the company logo slipped from Celia's powerless fingers. It fell onto the polished marble floor and shattered. Black coffee splashed onto the hem of her champagne-colored trousers. She did not look down. She only stood there. Staring straight at me. Staring at the old phone still broadcasting the attorney's steady voice. The expression on her face was first completely blank. Then it cracked. Inch by inch. As if something inside her had collapsed with a roar. The attorney's voice remained stable. Professional. and emotionless. The liquidation team will enter the company at 9 tomorrow morning. Please cooperate with the handover. Relevant letters have been simultaneously sent to the company's registered email and all directors' email addresses. For any questions, please contact. I turned off speaker without hesitation. The voice stopped abruptly. The conference room became so quiet that a falling needle could be heard. All eyes focused on me like spotlights. Shock, fear, disbelief, and a rapidly changing, cautious kind of appraisal. All the whispers, sighs, and mocking glances from moments earlier were gone. In their place was a near-terrified silence. Celia's lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Her eyes slowly focused from blankness. Then came overwhelming fury at being deceived. And beneath that fury, a bottomless fear she herself might not even have realized. Victor. She finally found her voice. It was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping wood. You. She repeated you several times. But the rest of the sentence would not come. I could guess what she wanted to ask. She wanted to ask when I became the hidden controller behind Halemark Capital. Why I had hidden it from her. Whether I had been acting for the past 3 years. Whether she had been nothing but a joke in this marriage. But she could not ask. The impact had smashed into her mind like a hammer, temporarily robbing her of language. Ryan reacted a little faster. The confusion and terror on his face lasted only seconds before being replaced by a stronger instinct to survive. He sprang up from the chair, moving so sharply that the chair fell over with a loud bang. He didn't care. He rushed to Celia's side, not to support her, but to speak quickly and incoherently. Celia. This must be a misunderstanding. Victor. Mr. Hale must be joking. Right. Mr. Hale. He turned to me. The smile forced onto his face looked worse than crying. His forehead was covered in fine sweat. We're family. What can't be discussed properly? Why take it this far? The company is Celia's hard work. It is also your hard work. Withdrawal and liquidation benefit no one. Everyone loses. He tried to use logic to persuade me. Tried to bind me with interests. Unfortunately, he used the wrong method. I did not even look at him. My eyes remained on Celia. Celia was awakened somewhat by Ryan's words. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. After all, she had been CEO for several years. Even if her heart was already overturned, she still tried to preserve the last shred of dignity on her face. She pushed away Ryan's hand, stood by herself, and lifted her chin. Her eyes became sharp again. But beneath that sharpness was panic she could not conceal. Victor, she said. Her voice steadied somewhat, but it was still dry as a stretched string. I need an explanation. An explanation. I repeated the word. A faint smile appeared at the corner of my mouth, full of mockery. Yes. An explanation. She sounded like she had grasped a life-saving rope. What exactly is going on? Halemark Capital. That anonymous largest shareholder. It's you. When did you? How could you? She could not finish. Because even she felt the question was absurd. How could I? A man who had cooked at home for 3 years. A man supported by her. A man who supposedly could not understand a company strategy meeting and was only fit to pour water. How could I be that mysterious and powerful Halemark Capital? The fund even she had heard of but never truly met. Ms. Shaw. I said. Still in that flat tone. This time, everyone held their breath to listen. 3 years ago, you came to me with a business plan and told me you wanted to start a company. Smart home technology. You said you had technology and ideas, but lacked seed capital. My voice was calm, as if telling a story unrelated to me. Yet each word struck the hearts of everyone present like a hammer. Celia's face went pale, like white paper soaked by rain. I remember asking how much you needed. You said $75,000 would be enough. I paused, my gaze sweeping across the room. I gave you $750,000. A suppressed wave of gasps sounded through the room. Several older shareholders looked at one another with complicated eyes. They all knew the company had been short of funds at the beginning. Celia had been rejected everywhere while trying to raise money. Finally, a sudden angel investment allowed the company to start. But they had always thought that money came from Celia's family connections or luck. No one had imagined it came from her so-called useless husband. Celia pressed her lips together. Her nails dug deep into her palm. When the company was registered, it needed a legal representative and shareholders. I continued, my voice still flat as dead water. You said you would be the legal representative and take 70%. I said okay. For the remaining 30%. You found 2 college classmates. 10% each. And the final 10%. You said you would reserve for future technical backbone. An investor representative with glasses could not help asking quietly, his voice trembling slightly. Then Halemark Capital's shares. Before Series B, the company increased capital and expanded equity. I looked at him. Ms. Shaw needed to bring in strategic investors and dilute original shares. Her own shares and the 20% held by her classmates were diluted proportionally. Only that 10% of reserved technical equity, because its ownership had not been clearly defined at the time, was separately carved out during the capital increase and acquired by a newly established offshore trust fund. I looked at Celia. The acquisition price was twice the company's valuation at the time. The money went through the trust channel. The documents were signed by you personally. Ms. Shaw. Have you forgotten because you're too important? Celia's body swayed. She remembered. Before Series B, there had indeed been an offshore fund with clean background that acquired some fragmented equity through a complicated legal structure. The attorney said that cleaning up the cap table would help later financing. And the price was fair. She had been too busy dealing with investors and never examined who the actual controller behind the fund was. She thought it was just a financial investor hoping to ride along. She signed. She did not even bring the equity transfer agreement home for me to see. In her heart, company matters had nothing to do with me. I wouldn't understand. Then that's only 10%. Ryan suddenly cut in. His voice sharp from urgency. Even if you are the actual controller of Halemark Capital. Mr. Hale. You only hold 10%. What right do you have to demand a CEO replacement? What right to start liquidation? The other shareholders won't agree. He acted as if he had grasped a life-saving rope and quickly turned toward the others in the room. Especially the older shareholders and the Series B investors with meaningful stakes. Director Parker. Mr. Mason. Say something. The company belongs to everyone. We can't let one person act recklessly. 10% does not give absolute control. What he says doesn't count. Director Parker was a man in his 50s. He had been silent the whole time. His expression serious. Now that Ryan had named him in public. He frowned but did not speak immediately. Instead, he looked at me first. His eyes carried appraisal and calculation. The other investor representative, Mr. Mason, the young man with glasses, also looked terrible. His institution had invested a great deal in Series B. If the company liquidated now, their loss would be severe. Mr. Hale, Mason said carefully, his tone now much more polite. Assistant Holt does have a point. Halemark Capital holds 10%. It is an important shareholder. Yes. But to unilaterally demand a board meeting to replace the CEO and initiate liquidation. Does that comply with the company charter and corporate law? The opinions of other shareholders are also important. His words gave Celia a trace of hope. Like a drowning person grabbing driftwood. She immediately looked toward the other shareholders. Uncle Parker. Mr. Liu. Grace. The company was not easy to build. We just completed Series B and the future is bright. We cannot destroy everyone's effort and investment because of some family conflict. I admit my attitude toward Victor was wrong. That is our private matter. We can close the door and solve it. But the company is a public vehicle. It cannot be treated like a game. Her words were rational and structured. She tried to define this as a family conflict and bind me with company interests and all shareholders' benefits. Several shareholders showed hesitation. Indeed, the company was rising. Suddenly replacing the CEO or even liquidating would hurt everyone. Even if I was the hidden major shareholder. Destroying the company to vent anger still seemed too irrational. The atmosphere shifted subtly again. Pressure gathered toward me once more. Ryan saw this and a flicker of triumph appeared in his eyes. He believed he had won back one round. Celia straightened slightly as well. Her eyes gained some confidence. But beneath that confidence was a faint mercy, as if she were looking at me and saying, "You exposed your cards too early. Now you have been countered." In front of everyone, I slowly took another item from my pocket. Not a phone. A thin dark blue velvet pouch. The pouch was soft, warm under the light. Small. Only large enough to hold a ring. I held the bottom of the pouch and gently poured. Ding! A crisp sound. A dark gold seal with an ancient shape fell onto the polished conference table. The seal was not large, but it looked heavy, as if it carried countless secrets and powers. The handle was a simple square column. There seemed to be tiny characters carved on the side. Everyone's eyes were drawn to the sudden appearance of the seal. Celia was closest. She instinctively narrowed her eyes and looked at its bottom. Then her breathing stopped. The color of her face changed from pale to ash. This is. Her voice shook so badly it nearly broke. She reached out as if to touch the seal, then froze halfway, as if afraid it was a burning iron. I said nothing. I picked up the seal, turned it over, and showed the imprint surface to everyone. The carved characters were complicated, but the middle words could be clearly read. A Centec special voting rights seal. Someone who understood corporate governance sucked in a sharp breath. Special voting rights. Director Parker murmured, horror appearing on his seasoned face for the first time. How is this possible? This type of clause only appeared in the earliest shareholder agreement. After later funding rounds and so many revisions. Such unequal power clauses should have been cleaned out long ago. They should have been cleaned out, I said, taking over his words as my fingers rubbed the cold body of the seal. On the condition that someone remembered it and actively proposed amending it. I looked at Celia. My eyes were calm, without waves. Then I spoke slowly, word by word, reading aloud the clause nearly everyone had forgotten. Buried deep in the thick agreement attachments. 3 years ago. In the original shareholder agreement at company registration. Appendix 3. Article 7. Concerning the founder special incentive clause. It states that the party providing key startup capital at the company's founding, in addition to holding corresponding equity, may receive one special voting rights seal. With this seal, when the company faces major decisions including but not limited to CEO replacement, merger, division, or liquidation, that shareholders' voting rights shall be calculated at 10 times his equity percentage. My voice was low and firm. Each word landed like a heavy hammer. 10 times. Mr. Mason cried out, his face deathly pale. 10% multiplied by 10. That is 100% voting power. Dead silence. More complete than before. Even the sound of air conditioning seemed to disappear. Ryan's triumph froze completely, then shattered bit by bit, turning into utter despair and fear. His legs weakened. He nearly failed to stand and hurriedly grabbed the back of a chair. Celia seemed to have had all her bones removed. She staggered backward and struck the edge of the conference table with a dull thud. She did not feel the pain. She only stared at the seal. At my hand holding the seal. Her eyes were full of pain and unwillingness. So that was it. He had controlled everything from the start. In these 3 years. All her effort. All her struggle. All her pride. In his eyes. Perhaps it had only been a performance on a stage he had provided with his money. She was the clown. Played by the man she had once loved. So, I put the seal away and returned it to the velvet pouch. My voice perfectly clear in the silent room. Regarding the proposal to convene an emergency board meeting. Replace the CEO. And initiate asset liquidation. My gaze swept across every face. Who is in favor? Who opposes? No one spoke. Only the second hand ticked forward. Director Parker closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. Mr. Mason slumped back into his chair and covered his face with both hands. Other executives and shareholders lowered their heads or looked away. Not one dared meet my eyes. Celia remained frozen there. Still in that backward posture. Like a statue weathered in an instant. Only Ryan still had a final trace of unwillingness and struggle. He looked at Celia. Then at me. His lips trembled. As if he wanted to say something but did not dare. At that moment. The conference room doorbell rang. Ding dong. Very light. But in the silence. It was especially clear. Page. still collapsed near the door with tear marks on her face, lifted her head blankly. The door opened from outside. 2 men in dark suits entered, carrying briefcases, both with serious expressions. The older one wore gold-rimmed glasses and had a steady presence. The younger one held a folder. The older man's gaze swept across the room before landing on me. He nodded slightly. "Mr. Hale." Then he turned to everyone else. His voice formal and clear. "Good morning, everyone. We are special representatives appointed by Halemark Trust and temporary heads of the Ascentech Incorporated Asset Liquidation Team. These are our authorization documents." The younger man stepped forward, opened the folder, and displayed documents stamped with a red official seal. "According to the entrustment agreement, before the formal liquidation team enters, we will temporarily take over the highest decision-making authority of daily company operations and ensure company assets are secured," the older man continued, his tone allowing no objection. "Now, we ask the current management team, especially Ms. Celia Shaw and President's assistant Ryan Holt, to cooperate with initial work handover and permission freezing." He looked at Celia and Ryan. "Please." Ryan's face lost every trace of color. Celia finally moved. Very slowly, bit by bit. She turned her head toward me. Those eyes, once beautiful, confident, and always superior, now held only emptiness and a barren, icy despair. Her mouth opened. It took all her strength to make a faint sound. "Victor, these 3 years, you watched me act like an idiot. Was it entertaining?" I did not answer. I only nodded to the trust representatives. "Thank you. I'll leave it to you." The older representative understood and gestured politely to Celia and Ryan. Ryan almost collapsed as the younger representative half-supported, half-escorted him toward the door. His body trembled, as if once he left this room, everything would be lost. Celia did not move. She still looked at me, as if searching my face for even the slightest wavering, or perhaps a hint of the warmth from the past. She found nothing. On my face, there was only calm indifference. Finally, the last of her strength drained away. Her shoulders collapsed. Her once straight back bent. Her perfect makeup could not cover the sudden grayness of her face. Like a puppet whose strings had been cut, she mechanically and unsteadily followed the trust representative toward the door. The coffee stain on her champagne-colored trouser leg was glaring. When she reached the doorway, she paused. She did not look back. Only her shoulders trembled slightly. Then she stepped out. The conference room door closed gently behind her. Click. 2 worlds were separated. Inside the room, there was still deathly silence. Everyone had yet to recover from the earth-shaking reversal. I walked to the head of the table. The chair that had belonged to Celia only minutes ago. I pulled it out and sat down. The leather seat still held a little warmth, like the warmth I had once left for her. But it was already gone forever. I lifted my head and looked at the stunned crowd. "Now," I said, "we continue the meeting. The agenda is Ascentech Incorporated's next step, bankruptcy liquidation." The room was so quiet that the hum of the air vent could be heard. The words bankruptcy liquidation pressed on everyone's chest like a boulder. Finally, Director Parker slowly opened his eyes. He was the oldest and held the largest stake after me and Celia. His voice was dry, tired, and controlled. "Mr. Hale, liquidation. Isn't that too extreme? The company just completed Series B. The business is growing. There is still cash on the books. Even if Celia is no longer suitable to serve as CEO, we can immediately recruit externally or promote internally. Liquidation would be a huge loss for everyone, including you." His eyes held a trace of pleading. Mr. Mason also lowered his hands from his face. His face remained pale, but his eyes carried urgency. "That's right, Mr. Hale. Our institution invested real money because we believed in the company's future and team. The team is still here. The technical foundation is still here. The market is still here. As long as the transition is stable and a suitable leader is found, the company can be saved. If we liquidate directly, assets will be discounted, debts repaid, shareholders wiped out." Several smaller shareholders and investor representatives echoed quietly. "Yes. We can't liquidate. It would be such a shame. Mr. Hale, please reconsider." The pressure gathered again. But this time, it was no longer mockery. It was fearful pleading. I did not answer immediately. My fingers tapped the table lightly in a steady rhythm. Director Parker. I looked at him. That $800,000 marketing expense in the third quarter last year. Written off as channel promotion failed to meet expectations. Do you know where it actually went? Director Parker's face changed. His body stiffened slightly. Panic flashed in his eyes. Mr. Mason. I turned toward the young man with glasses. During your institution's due diligence, the patent ownership documents for the company's core algorithms. Did you see the complete version? Or the version missing the final 3 key attachment pages and original developer signature page? Mr. Mason sat straight instantly. Behind his glasses, his eyes widened in terror. And all of you. My gaze swept across the executives who had looked at me earlier with eyes saying, "What do you understand?" The finance department's 12 million yuan early recognition of accounts receivable last month. Sorry. In dollar terms. Nearly 1.8 million. The client, Future Innovation Technology, was a Delaware-registered company with $15,000 in paid-in capital. Founded less than half a year ago. Can that money really be collected? Or was it simply a technical adjustment to make the Series B numbers look better? Every person I named looked worse than the last. The slight atmosphere of united resistance that had just risen vanished instantly, replaced by deeper fear and guilt. The company is growing, I said calmly, my voice cutting across their ears like a knife. But how much sand is mixed into the rocket fuel? How many cracks are in the structure? Do you truly not know? Or are you pretending not to know? No one dared answer. Celia has ability and courage. I don't deny that. I paused. But she was too rushed. Rushing to prove herself. Rushing to scale the company. Rushing to let everyone see the success of Celia Shaw. For that success, numbers could be beautified. Risks could be ignored. Rules could be bypassed. This company is like a box covered with beautiful colored paper. It looks bright from outside. Inside, it has already been eaten hollow. Series B money entering the company is not a lifeline. It is only another brighter layer of paper pasted over the box. If we continue, there are only 2 outcomes. Either the paper tears and the hole is exposed, and everyone goes down together. Or you keep pasting paper until the lie becomes a balloon no one dares pierce. And then one day, pop, it explodes even worse. I placed the pen down. Liquidation is cutting flesh now. It hurts. But bones remain. Continuing operations is waiting for poison to spread through the whole body. I looked at Director Parker. You're an old hand. Director Parker. You should understand this calculation better than I do. Director Parker opened his mouth. In the end, he only sighed. Long and defeated. Mr. Mason looked gray-faced. But our investment. Remaining assets after liquidation will be distributed according to equity percentages. I cut him off. Halemark Capital, as one of the creditors, will also participate in distribution. How much can be recovered will depend on the audit. It is better than losing everything. Cold. But the most realistic path. The conference room fell into silence again. This time, it was silence born from resignation. Since no one had further objections, I looked at the 2 trust representatives standing quietly nearby. Please initiate the liquidation process as planned. First take over the company's finance, HR, and core documents. The older representative nodded. Rest assured, Mr. Hale. We will proceed legally and properly. He signaled the younger man. Freeze all accounts and system permissions at the finance and IT departments. I'll retrieve all contract files from legal. The 2 left decisively. They left me alone to face the wreckage. Everyone, I said. That's all for today. Before the liquidation team formally enters, basic operations will be maintained by the trust representatives. Please cooperate with the handover and wait for further notice. The meeting was over. Everyone was relieved. Yet their footsteps were heavy. One by one, they lowered their heads, collected their things, and filed out. No one talked. Soon, I was the only person left in the conference room. Sunlight entered through the huge windows and fell across the long polished table. The air still carried faint coffee and expensive perfume. Half an hour ago, This room had been full of ambitious people celebrating Series B success and planning an ocean of stars. Now there was only wreckage. And the sound of something breaking beyond repair. My phone vibrated. A message from the trust representative. Mr. Hale. Ms. Celia Shaw and Mr. Ryan Holt are currently in Ms. Shaw's office. Their emotions are unstable. Do you want us to arrange personnel intervention? I replied. No need. I'll go myself. I stood and walked out of the conference room. The corridor was quiet. But not ordinary quiet. In the office area, most employees did not yet fully know what had happened. But they had clearly sensed something. They avoided eye contact and whispered. Sometimes someone secretly glanced at me, then quickly lowered his head and pretended to work. I ignored them and walked straight to the largest office at the end of the corridor. The door was closed. I knocked twice. No response. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Inside, the office was spacious, with a broad city view. The decoration was Celia's favorite modern minimalist style. Black, white, and gray, with several bright art pieces as accents. But now, that elegance was broken. A folder lay scattered on the floor. Papers were everywhere. The ergonomic chair Celia often used had been knocked sideways. Celia stood with her back to the door, facing the floor-to-ceiling window. She was not wearing her jacket. The champagne suit jacket was casually draped over the sofa arm. She wore only a silk blouse. On the back of the blouse, a dark patch of sweat looked especially obvious under the light, revealing her inner anxiety. Ryan was collapsed in the single chair in the reception area, head buried in his hands, motionless like a statue drained of its soul. When they heard the door open, Celia's shoulders tightened slightly, but she did not turn around. Ryan suddenly lifted his head. When he saw it was me, complex emotions burst in his eyes. Fear, resentment, unwillingness. They almost swallowed him. His lips trembled. He tried to stand, but his legs seemed filled with lead. After several tries, he fell back weakly. Victor. Victor. Please. His voice was hoarse, with obvious sobs. Let me go. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I'm just an employee. I did whatever Ms. Shaw told me to do. I never wanted to offend you. Those things were all Ms. Shaw's ideas. I was just running errands. He begged incoherently, trying to push all responsibility onto Celia. Celia's back remained facing me, but her body had clearly stiffened. I walked to the other side of the sofa and sat slowly. My gaze fell on Ryan's bloodless face. Ryan Holt, I said calmly, but with pressure that allowed no resistance. At the end of last year, the company inflated contracts and siphoned $450,000 from Halemark Capital's follow-on investment funds. Do I need to remind you which account that money ultimately went into? Ryan's face instantly lost all color. Your cousin's new bar in Miami had quite a large investment scale, didn't it? My tone was flat, each word fatal. And the limited edition Hermes bag you bought your girlfriend last month, with your assistant's salary. That seemed a little difficult. Ryan's breathing grew frantic. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. He had thought those things were hidden well. Celia might have known a little, but he never imagined I would know in such detail. Celia was desperate for success. And you fanned the flames while stealing from the company. I summarized coldly. The two of you were a match made in heaven. No. Ryan still wanted to argue, but his voice grew weaker and finally disappeared. He knew any excuse before me was useless. Get out, I said, as if pardoned. Ryan scrambled up and rushed toward the door. He did not dare look at Celia again. The door opened and gently closed. Only Celia and I remained in the office. A suffocating silence filled the air. Outside the window, the sunlight was harsh, casting long window shadows across the floor. After a long time, Celia slowly turned around. Her makeup was ruined. Her eyeliner had smudged, revealing heavy dark circles and deep exhaustion underneath. Her lipstick had faded, making her lips pale. She looked at me. Her eyes were hollow. The anger, arrogance, and unwillingness of before were gone. Only bone-deep fatigue and helpless confusion remained. Why? She finally spoke. Her voice was terribly hoarse. Victor, tell me. Why? Why hide it from me? Why use this method? Was it satisfying to watch me jump around like a clown under your eyes? These 3 years. I stayed up every night. Begged clients for orders. Drank with people I hated. I came home and still had to face a husband who understood nothing. Sometimes I even thought you were useless. That you did not deserve my effort. As she spoke, tears fell without warning. They slid down her face, leaving 2 clear tracks. She did not sob. She only let the tears flow silently. That suppressed pain was more heartbreaking than loud crying. And the result? She pulled at the corner of her mouth, trying to smile. But it looked worse than crying. All my effort, all my achievements, even all my pride, were given by you. You paved the road long ago. What am I? A puppet manipulated by you. A joke performed for you. She took a step forward, her footsteps unsteady. Victor, I am your wife. Her voice suddenly rose, carrying uncontrollable pain and collapse. For 3 years, we slept in the same bed, ate from the same kitchen. You had countless chances to tell me, to warn me, to pull me back. But you didn't. You stood beside me and watched coldly. Watched me make mistakes. Watched me swell with pride. Watched me push our company, everything we had, toward a cliff. She came in front of me, bent down, and braced both hands on the sofa arm. Her red eyes locked onto mine. You hate me, don't you? A tear fell onto the back of my hand. Warm, then quickly cold. You hate that I ignored you for 3 years. That I ordered you around. That I got close to Ryan. So you used the cruelest method to take revenge on me. To destroy everything I had. To leave me with nothing. To make me kneel and beg you. There was accusation and pain in her voice. And a faint hope she would not admit. Perhaps she hoped I would say no. That it was a misunderstanding. That there was still room to recover. I lifted my head and met her gaze. There were too many emotions in her eyes. Pain, questioning, despair. A fragile hope she did not dare believe in. Celia, I said. My voice so calm it sounded unfamiliar even to me. I have never hated you. She froze. As if that sentence struck her soul. 3 years ago. You said you wanted to start a business and build something of your own. I supported you. The money I gave. The risk I bore. You wanted to be CEO and control everything. Fine. I stepped behind the curtain and gave you the stage. I hid it from you not because I wanted to watch you make a fool of yourself. It was because I knew your personality. You are competitive, arrogant, and do not like listening to others. If I had told you from the beginning that I was the investor, what would you have thought? Would you have felt the company still belonged to you? Would you have asked me for advice at every step? Or would you have held your breath and tried even harder to prove yourself to me? Celia's lips trembled. No words came. I gave you the stage. I also gave you the rope. I wanted to see how high you could take this company without my direct interference. I also hoped you would learn to walk on your own. Learn to watch the road. Learn to respect rules. I paused, my gaze falling on the files scattered across the floor. Unfortunately, you learned only to run. And the faster you ran, the more crooked the path became. In your eyes, there was only speed, scale, the next financing target. Data could be faked. Risk could be ignored. Legal gaps could be exploited. Someone like Ryan stayed beside you, flattering you, helping you handle things that could not be shown in daylight. You sensed it. But because he was useful, because he did solve certain problems for you, you chose to look away. Celia. I called her name, with a trace of pain in my voice. What I want to destroy is not everything you are. What I want to destroy is this company that has rotted from the roots. And the CEO Shaw, who would do anything for success. As for you. I stopped. She held her breath, looking at me nervously. After liquidation, you will carry debt. Your reputation will be ruined. And it will likely be difficult for you to return to this industry for several years. I spoke directly, without concealment. That is the price you must pay for your mistakes. Her eyes dimmed, as if all light had been drained. But, my tone shifted. You are still young. And capable. If after all this, You can truly calm down and understand where you went wrong and how you should walk from here. I stood and walked to her large desk. From the pen holder, I took a sticky note and her pen. I quickly wrote one line and handed it to her. Celia accepted it blankly. On the note was a name and a phone number. This man was my old boss when I worked in investment banking. Now he does consulting and angel investing on his own. He sometimes takes interest in founders who have real potential and have suffered real setbacks. I'm only giving you a contact. Whether he meets you or helps you depends on whether you can convince him. Celia held the thin sticky note so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked at the words. Then at me. Her eyes were complicated beyond description. Shock. Confusion. Humiliation. And a very faint, almost unbelievable tremor. Why? She asked again. Her voice light as a feather. Why still give me this? I did not answer. You can use this office until the end of today. After that, the trust team will seal it. I turned toward the door. Celia, take care of yourself. As I reached the door, I held the handle. Behind me came her suppressed, broken sobs. Like an injured animal. I did not look back. I opened the door and walked out. The door closed behind me, cutting her crying off inside. The corridor was very quiet. As if nothing had happened. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. The doors slowly opened. Empty. I stepped in and pressed for the underground garage. The metal doors closed. The mirrored wall reflected my expressionless face. The elevator began to descend. The numbers dropped floor by floor. I knew that from the moment I said bankruptcy liquidation. My marriage with Celia had become like this company. Existing in name only. Some things, once broken, are broken. No matter how you piece them together. The cracks remain. The elevator reached the second basement level with a ding. I stepped out. The garage was dim. The air smelling faintly of gasoline and dust. I walked toward the black sedan I had not driven in a long time. Now covered with a thin layer of dust. Just as I reached the car, my phone vibrated. This time it was not the trust representative. It was an unsaved number I knew by heart. I answered. On the other end came a gentle, slightly aged male voice with a smile. Victor. I heard you finally showed that little seal today. That girl from the Shaw family should be fully awake now. Shouldn't she? It's me, Uncle Martin. I leaned against the car door. The chill of the underground garage seeped into my shirt. The seal has landed. I said softly. She should be fully awake now. The old man on the other end, Martin Young, was the man who had guided me in investment banking years ago. He was also one of the very few people who knew the true owner behind Halemark Capital. He sighed quietly. There was no surprise in it. Only understanding and a faint trace of worry. Awake. Yes. But I'm afraid she woke too violently and hurt herself badly. Victor. I know you act with measure. But this time, wasn't it a little too decisive? After all, you were once husband and wife. I stared at the mottled stains on the concrete pillar opposite me and did not answer immediately. A complicated feeling passed through my heart. All right. I won't nag. Uncle Martin changed his tone, becoming lighter. Your move caused quite a stir. The circle has already heard things. A few old friends called and asked why Ascentech entered liquidation right after Series B and whether that girl Celia caused some enormous disaster. I brushed them off for you. Thank you, Uncle Martin. What are you thanking me for? The money you helped me earn years ago is enough for me to brush people off for 10 lifetimes. He laughed. Then grew serious. But liquidation is liquidation. Do you have a complete plan for what comes after? That company's foundation is not clean. If it is truly investigated, Celia may face legal liability. And that Ryan Holt does not look like an easy person. He may bite back. The responsibility she should bear, she cannot avoid. I said calmly. As for Ryan, the trust team will handle it fully. However much he swallowed, he will spit it out. Down to the last cent. That's good. Uncle Martin paused. Oh. Right. That number you gave me. Will that girl Celia really call? I don't know. I answered honestly. I gave her the chance. Whether she can grasp it is up to her. The other end was silent for several seconds. Victor. Uncle Martin said. A little emotional now. Your temperament is still the same as before. Cold on the surface. But inside. He stopped. Forget it. Say the word if you need anything from me. Not for now. The trust will push liquidation according to plan. Good. I have a meeting. Talk later. Goodbye. Uncle Martin. After hanging up, I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The garage was wide and silent. Only the distant sound of an engine occasionally broke the stillness. I opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat. The inside smelled faintly of leather and dust from long disuse. I did not start the car immediately. My fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. Uncle Martin's words echoed in my ear. Wasn't it a little too decisive? I had not answered him. Because even I could not clearly say how much of that seal dropping had been liquidation and how much had been revenge. Perhaps both. Perhaps from the very beginning. I had been waiting for this day. Waiting until she personally walked her own path to a dead end. Then I could openly take back everything that belonged to me. Principal and interest. I started the car. The low rumble of the engine echoed in the underground garage. The black sedan drove slowly out of the gate. Afternoon sunlight hit me head-on, making me narrow my eyes. My phone vibrated again. A new message from the trust representative. Mr. Hale. Preliminary finance review discovered that within 1 week after Series B funding closed, Ms. Celia Shaw transferred 2 payments from the company account to a third-party firm called Horizon Consulting, totaling $600,000. The legal representative of this firm is Ryan Holt's cousin. Corporate records show 0 paid-in capital. Fund flows are still being traced. $600,000. The Series B money had barely warmed in the account before being silently moved out like this. A cold curve appeared at the corner of my mouth. Celia. Celia. You kept saying the company was the result of your day and night work. But the money you worked so hard to raise turned around and fed the poisonous snake beside you. Were you building a company? Or working for Ryan Holt? I did not reply immediately. I placed the phone on the passenger seat and focused on driving. The car passed several blocks and finally stopped before an old office building. The building looked aged. The exterior tiles had yellowed with time. Downstairs was a noodle shop that had been open for more than 10 years. I turned off the engine, got out, and looked up at the half-open window on the 6th floor. That was Halemark Capital's earliest office. Only 30 square meters. 1 desk. 2 computers. And me. I had spent countless nights here, watching numbers in accounts climb from zero. From the first $750,000 angel investment to an offshore trust managing assets worth hundreds of millions. Every step was walked by me alone. And Celia. She only knew Halemark Capital was a mysterious investor. She never knew this capital beast had been born in a tiny office where even the air conditioning had to be used sparingly. I went upstairs and pushed open the glass door with the faded words Halemark Capital pasted on it. Someone was already waiting inside. A middle-aged man in a gray suit. Hair combed neatly. A stack of documents spread before him. A disposable paper cup in hand filled with instant coffee from the convenience store downstairs. Mr. Hale. He stood and bowed slightly. I'm Frank Ford, the special attorney you retained for the bankruptcy liquidation matter. I've initially organized the relevant materials. There are several key points that require your confirmation. I sat across from him and swept my eyes over the files on the table. The top document was titled, Ascend Tech Incorporated Interim Financial Audit Report. Go ahead, I said, leaning back. Frank opened the file. His speaking pace was moderate, but clear, based on the bank transaction records, contracts, and internal approval documents currently obtained. I preliminarily judge Ascend Tech to have at least 3 categories of legal risk. First, during Series B financing, management systematically modified key financial data, involving approximately $3.5 million of inflated revenue and $1.8 million of early recognized accounts receivable. This may constitute fraud against investors. Second, the ownership of core algorithm patents is defective. Certain key technical employees did not sign complete IP transfer agreements when they left. If original developers sue, the company may lose its core technological moat. Third, Ms. Celia Shaw, as legal representative, is suspected of misappropriating company funds and failing to disclose related party transactions. The amount involved is preliminarily estimated to exceed $1.2 million. He paused, closed the file, and looked directly at me. Any one of these three problems alone is enough to plunge the company into major legal disputes. With all three occurring together, liquidation is almost the only path that can protect the interests of all parties to the maximum extent. But, he emphasized the word, during the liquidation, Ms. Shaw and Mr. Holt, as directly responsible persons, will inevitably face the risk of criminal prosecution. Mr. Hale, are you certain you want to go this far? I knew what he was really asking. He was asking about my attitude toward Celia. Was it enough to liquidate the company and leave her ruined? Or did I want to send her to prison? I was silent for several seconds. Light slanted across the table. Dust floated slowly in the beam. Handle it according to law. I said. What should be referred to judicial authorities should not be suppressed. What should be recovered must be recovered down to the last cent. Frank understood. He nodded. Understood. I will organize the complete chain of evidence and submit a special report to the Economic Crime Unit. What about Ryan? Ryan Holt is more serious. He used his position to fabricate service contracts and inflate procurement costs, cumulatively embezzling over $1.8 million. Most of it flowed into shell companies opened under relatives' names and was then laundered through various channels. We have already secured at least 4 complete fund flow chains. The evidence is sufficient. Frank remained professionally calm, as if reading an ordinary meeting memo. But I knew what that meant. Ryan's ending was basically written. Good. I said. Standing. Keep me updated. Frank also stood. After hesitating, he spoke again. Mr. Hale, there is one matter I believe I should inform you of. This morning, Ms. Shaw's private attorney called me to ask whether there is any possibility of resolving parts of the liquidation through settlement, with Ms. Shaw personally assuming some debts in exchange for retaining certain company assets. She seems not to have fully accepted reality yet. Of course she hasn't. I walked to the window and looked down at the old street below. A few pedestrians sat on plastic stools outside the noodle shop, steaming bowls in front of them. Celia's greatest trait is refusing to lose. When you knock her down once, her first reaction is not surrender. It is to look for a chance to fight back. If she didn't struggle a few last times, she wouldn't be the Celia I know. Frank did not answer. He only stood quietly. Let her struggle. I said. When she is done, she will calm down. You do what you should do. Ignore her settlement probes. I turned toward the door. Halfway there, I stopped and looked back at Frank. One more thing. Trace the exact flow of that $600,000 transferred to Horizon Consulting. If it went into Ryan's personal pocket, recover it. If Celia herself had a share. I paused. Count it as well. When I walked out of the building, the sky was already beginning to darken. The early autumn evening carried a chill. Wind poured in from the alley mouth, lifting the hem of my shirt. I stood on the steps and watched neon lights along the street turn on one by one. There was no sense of satisfaction in my heart. After revenge succeeds, people often feel empty. I took out my phone and sent the trust representative a message. Continue tracing the $600,000. Freeze all Ryan Holt accounts simultaneously. Also, schedule a meeting with Director Parker tonight. Director Parker was Ascenteca's largest natural person shareholder after me and Celia, holding 18%. He lost the most in this liquidation. But he was also the smartest person there. I knew he must have something to say to me. And those words were not convenient to say in the office. Half an hour later, I met Director Parker at an old tea house in the south of the city. He had arrived before me. He sat in a window booth. A cup of pure tea before him refilled 3 times. The tea now as pale as water. When he saw me enter, he waved. His expression had softened compared to the afternoon, but worry still covered his face. Mr. Hale. He stood and waited for me to sit before sitting again. I ordered the tiguanyin you like. I don't know whether your taste has changed over the years. I was slightly surprised. He remembered that I drank tiguanyin back when I first met Director Parker. He was not yet a formal shareholder. Only an advisor Celia had brought in. He did not speak much, but his eyes were sharp. At that time, Celia and I were not married yet. I had occasionally met him at the company. Perhaps he had noticed during some meal. It hasn't changed, I said. Director Parker poured me tea. The fragrance rose. He was silent for a while, organizing his words. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavier than in the afternoon. Mr. Hale, forgive me for asking directly. How far do you plan to make Celia bear responsibility? I did not rush to answer. I lifted the tea and took a sip. I am not here to plead for her. Director Parker quickly added. I've lived more than 50 years and seen many things. Celia is bold and capable. But her ambition stretched her too full. She is not wronged by what happened today. He paused. His eyes complicated. I just want to know whether there is still a limit in your heart when it comes to her. Speak directly. Director Parker. He looked at me for several seconds. Then sighed. I'll put it this way. In business, Celia made mistakes. And she should be punished. But you also know that in some matters, she was not the mastermind. Ryan Holt is a worm that only knows how to grab. Celia was wrapped by him and slid downward step by step. At first, she may only have wanted to make the reports look a little better. Then Ryan guided her further and further away. Of course, I'm not excusing her. She signed the documents. So she has responsibility. But for the same offense, principal offender and accomplice are different. He drank a large mouthful of tea, as if swallowing down his hesitation. I've known Celia for 4 years. From when she was still a young woman handing out business plans everywhere, rejected by investors and secretly wiping tears in the restroom, to later sitting at the head of the table with confidence. She changed a lot. But some things didn't change. Deep down, she is still that girl who refuses to lose and refuses to admit she was wrong. You made her take this fall. It hurts. She will remember it. But if you make the fall so hard that she can never get up again, Mr. Hale, then it might no longer be making her wake up. That would be truly destroying her. The teahouse was quiet. From the neighboring booth came the sound of middle-aged men shuffling cards. I looked at the cup of Tiguanyin gradually cooling before me and fell briefly into thought. I understood what he meant. He was old-fashioned. He believed in leaving people a way out. In his view, liquidating the company, taking away Celia's position and reputation, and making her lose everything should already be enough. Further than that was pushing someone to death. But I did not think that way. Director Parker. I set down the teacup. Do you think the seal I showed her today was carved today? Director Parker froze. 3 years ago, when I signed that shareholder agreement, I had someone add the special voting rights seal clause. At the time, I was thinking, if one day Celia led the company astray, if she could no longer listen to reason, if her side became full of people like Ryan, I needed something to fall back on. Something that could pull this ship back onto the right course. I looked at him. Director Parker. That seal was not prepared for revenge today. It was prepared to pull her out of the fire pit when she reached a dead end. Director Parker frowned slightly, tasting the meaning behind my words. After liquidation, Ascentech will be dissolved. But its core assets, the technical team, algorithm patents, and some high-quality client resources, will not scatter. Halemark Capital will take those assets over as creditor and reorganize them into a new company. The new company's structure will be cleaner. Governance will be more standardized. And, I paused. I will leave Celia a position. Director Parker's eyes widened. What did you say? Not CEO. I added. She is not qualified to be CEO again for now. But Chief Product Officer. She can hold that seat. Her product sense and market judgment are real skills. Those cannot be faked. If she is willing to start over and truly change her bad habits of chasing quick success, I can give her that chance. Director Parker's mouth opened. For a long time, he could not speak. The puer before him had gone cold, and he lifted and lowered it unconsciously, apparently shaken by this news. Mr. Hale. He finally found his voice. You mean, you plan to break her apart and mold her again? Not mold. I said. She shattered herself. I am simply sweeping the pieces together and asking whether she wants to piece herself back together. Director Parker was silent for a long time. Under the dim teahouse light, his white hair made him look older. Finally, he let out a long breath. A trace of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, carrying admiration and respect. "Mr. Hale. I concede. Honestly. This afternoon in the conference room. I thought you came only to vent anger. Now I understand. This chessboard of yours reaches much farther than I imagined." He lifted his teacup as if toasting. "All right. Since you have a plan. I won't say more. When do you plan to tell Celia about this position? When she truly realizes where she went wrong?" I said. "That won't be too late." Director Parker nodded and did not ask further. We discussed a few more details about the liquidation process before he stood to leave. Before he left, he patted my shoulder. The force was light, but carried a complicated elder-like meaning. "Mr. Hale. If possible. I still hope you and Celia can part decently." He turned and walked out without waiting for my reply. I sat alone in the booth, looking at the deepening night outside the window and listening to shuffling cards and laughter from the next table. The night suddenly felt very long. I took out my phone, opened my chat with Frank, and paused with my finger above the screen for several seconds. In the end, I sent only one line. "Continue as planned. No adjustments for now. No adjustments for now." It meant what should be investigated would still be investigated. What should be recovered would still be recovered. Whoever should be delivered to the law would not escape. But I would not completely block Celia's road. I would leave a door. After she hit enough walls and cried enough tears, she could turn around and see it herself. On the third day after liquidation officially began, Ascentech fell into unprecedented chaos. The trust representatives brought attorneys and accountants to fully take over the company. Finance was turned upside down. 4 years of ledgers, vouchers, and contracts piled up in 3 conference rooms. IT cooperated to freeze permissions in all core systems. Some mid-level managers discovered they could not even log into their email. Panic spread through the office like a plague. I went to the company every day. Not to dictate everything, but to sit there. As long as I was present. Those shareholders and executives who still resisted the liquidation did not dare make small moves behind the scenes. On the afternoon of the third day, I was in the CFO's office reviewing a procurement contract from 3 years ago when commotion suddenly sounded outside. A woman's sharp voice pierced the corridor. "Move aside. I want to see Victor Hale." "What right do you have to seal my office? My personal things are inside." I set down the file and walked to the door. In the corridor, a woman in her 30s was being blocked by the trust representative's assistant. She had big wavy hair and wore a sharply tailored black suit dress. Her makeup was delicate, but it could not conceal the hysterical energy on her face. It was Lydia Liu, Celia's college classmate and one of the company's early co-founders. She had held 10% at the beginning, diluted to a little over 6% after Series B. Liquidation meant millions in paper wealth evaporated instantly. "Lydia," I said, leaning against the doorframe. My voice was not loud, but enough to make her quiet. She snapped her head toward me. Her eyes were red, as if she had just cried. But the stronger emotion was anger. "Victor Hale, you still have the face to come out. You drove the company into this. You pushed Celia into that state. Do you know what she looks like now? Do you know how many people outside are laughing at her?" I did not respond. I only looked at her quietly. She burned in that anger for a few seconds, then seemed to be blocked by something. Her voice lowered until only rough breathing remained. "What happened to Celia?" I asked. Lydia bit her lip, hesitating. In the end, she said it anyway, her voice suppressing sobs. "She locked herself at home for 3 days. Not eating. Not drinking. Not answering calls. I went to knock. And she wouldn't open. This morning her mother called me crying, saying Celia's phone was off and asking if I knew where she was. I went there and listened. No movement inside. But the lights were on. Victor, if something happens to her, can your conscience bear it?" The corridor was quiet for several seconds. Passing employees slowed down and listened, then quickly left under the sharp look of the trust assistant. My face showed nothing, but somewhere in my chest, something tugged lightly. "Send me the address," I said. Lydia froze. You're going. What else?" I looked at her. "Is your going useful? She hasn't opened the door for 3 days." Lydia was speechless. After a moment, she took out her phone and sent me the location. After sending it, she stared at me with one final warning. Victor, if you still treat her like a person, don't stimulate her anymore. She has suffered enough these days. I did not answer. I returned to the office, picked up my car keys, and left the company without looking back. Celia lived in the apartment we bought after marriage. A high-rise downtown. More than 200 square meters. With an excellent view. The divorce process had not yet officially begun, so the property was still under both our names. On the drive there, many images flashed through my mind. The day we moved in, she spun in circles in the living room, saying, "Victor, look at the night view outside. It's beautiful. We'll grow old here." Later, she became busier and busier, often returning after midnight. The living room light was always the one I left on for her. She barely looked at it and walked straight into the study to keep working. Later still, she began mentioning Ryan's name in front of me. Said he was sharp, sensible, a real talent. At the time, I said nothing. I only pulled up Ryan's resume and social security records late one night and discovered the reason he had left his previous job. Fired for falsifying performance data. I did not tell Celia. I wanted to see when she would notice on her own. She never did. Or rather, she did not want to notice. Ryan had a sweet mouth. He knew how to serve. He circled around her and satisfied every vanity she had as a strong businesswoman. She preferred to believe he was a hidden talent rather than admit she had misjudged someone. The car stopped downstairs. I took the elevator to the 22nd floor. When the elevator doors opened, the corridor was quiet. Only a faint yellow light leaked out from the door at the end. I walked over and knocked twice. No response. I knocked 3 more times. A little harder. "Celia. It's me." Still nothing. But faintly, I heard a very light, suppressed breath. She was standing behind the door. "Open the door," I said. "I don't have to go in. Open it a crack and let me see you." After about half a minute, the lock clicked. The security chain was still on. The door opened a fist-width crack. Half of Celia's face appeared in the gap. Her hair hung messy around her face. Her face was gray-white. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her eye sockets had sunk deep. In only 3 days, she seemed to have lost an entire layer of herself. Her eyes were cloudy and wary, like a frightened animal ready to slam the door at any second. She looked at me for several seconds. When she spoke, her voice was almost inaudibly hoarse. "What are you doing here?" "Checking whether you're dead," I said. The corner of her mouth moved, as if she wanted to laugh. But the curve became only a faint, trembling exhale. "Don't worry. I won't die." "Then open the door," I said. "Your mother called Lydia because she couldn't reach you. You're making a woman in her 60s worry like this. Are you proud of that?" Something in Celia's expression finally loosened. Cracks appeared in that hard layer around her eyes. She lowered her head and remained silent for several seconds. Then she unhooked the chain. The door opened. I walked in. The living room was dark. The curtains were drawn tight. Only a floor lamp at the entry was on, illuminating the chaos in the room. Takeout boxes piled on the coffee table, some already moldy. Sofa cushions were scattered everywhere. The TV screen was frozen on a variety show. The sound was muted, so the people on screen were laughing silently. Celia returned to the center of the living room and sat on the sofa. She did not look at me. She only stared at her bare feet. She wore an oversized old t-shirt. Her whole body shrunk inside it like a bird soaked in rain. "You won," she said suddenly, voice flat. "The company is gone. The money is gone. My reputation is gone." Ryan ran. I heard he didn't even make it onto the plane and was stopped at the airport. My friends, Lydia and the others, are still around. But no one dares call me. Afraid I'll ask to borrow money. She pulled her mouth into a self-mocking smile. "Victor, are you satisfied?" I stood in the middle of the living room and did not sit. Looking at her like this, I did not feel the satisfaction I had imagined. Only something heavy, unclear, pressing down in my chest. Ryan wasn't stopped at the airport, I said. He was taken away by economic crime police at the train station. The charge is embezzlement. The amount involved is $1.8 million. He has been criminally detained. Celia's body stiffened visibly. She turned to look at me. For the first time. Her eyes showed true panic without any disguise. 1.8 million. You didn't know. She opened her mouth. As if rapidly searching her memories. I knew he transferred some money out. A large amount. But he said it was for business needs and went under market expenses. I signed some approval forms. But I didn't look closely at the amounts. Of course you didn't. I said coldly. You didn't even read full financial statements. You only looked at summary data. Your people cooked the books to that extent. And you noticed nothing because you had no time to care. All your energy was spent raising money, meeting clients, and holding strategy meetings. You were like a driver in a locomotive, only pressing the accelerator, never looking where the tracks were turning. Celia bit her lip. The skin was cracked and bleeding slightly. She did not argue. Ryan used you. He treated your company as his personal ATM and took 1.8 million. And you, Celia Shaw, as the legal representative, signed no fewer than 20 related party transaction agreements and inflated contracts in the past 3 years. Every one has your handwritten signature. Do you think investigators will let you go because you didn't look closely? Her face collapsed completely. Like a camel crushed by the final straw. Her shoulders caved. She covered her face with both hands. From between her fingers came one suppressed sob. Then a second. A third. Finally. She broke into hard crying. I did not move. I stood there and watched her cry. She cried for a long time. Long enough for the daylight outside the window to disappear completely. Long enough for my legs to feel numb. Finally. She slowly lowered her hands. Her face was covered in tears. Her eyes were swollen like walnuts. But she looked more alive than before. Those things that had been stretched tight had finally broken completely. Victor. She sniffed. Her voice was hoarse but clearer now. Tell me where I went wrong. Tell me. Was it that I shouldn't have hired Ryan in the first place? Or that I shouldn't have beautified the numbers during Series B? Or that I shouldn't have started a business from the beginning? I sat down opposite her. Across the coffee table. I looked at her. Under the dim yellow light. Her tear-streaked face suddenly reminded me of 3 years ago. When she first stood at the kitchen doorway and told me, I want to start a company. Back then. Her eyes were full of light. Bright enough to reach into someone's heart. The step where you went wrong, I said, was the day you began to believe that rules are made for the weak. She froze. You wanted to win too much. Celia. You wanted to win for everyone to see. For me. For the classmates who once looked down on you. For the investors who rejected you. Even for your parents. You wanted to prove you were not inferior to anyone. So you began taking shortcuts. You began believing that as long as the outcome was good, the process didn't matter. Ryan caught exactly that mindset and pushed you again and again toward the cliff. While you thought he was helping you speed up. I paused. Watching her eyes gradually focus. Do you know? I read your original business plan 4 full times. The first time. I thought you had ideas but lacked logic. The second time. I thought you were too idealistic. The third time. I began to think this person really had something. The fourth time. I decided to invest in you. Not because I loved you. Because I believed you had the ability to make it work. But the road you later took was no longer the one written in that business plan. Celia's tears began falling again. But she did not sob aloud. She only bit her lip tightly. As if using pain to keep herself awake. What about now? She finally asked. Voice trembling badly. Do you still believe in me now? I did not answer immediately. Through the crack in the curtains. City lights entered the dark living room in a thin band. Falling across the moldy takeout box on the coffee table. I gave you a phone number. Remember? She froze. Then she reached through the mess on the coffee table and searched. After some time. She pulled the sticky note from under a wrinkled magazine. The paper was creased. But the writing was still clear. Uncle Martin's name and number. Frank's team will submit a special report to the Economic Crime Unit after liquidation ends. Your issues are enough for criminal prosecution. But if during the liquidation you actively cooperate, truthfully explain all irregular operations, And within your authority help recover the company's misappropriated assets as much as possible. There is room to seek leniency. Celia gripped the note until her knuckles whitened. Call this number after you get through this. I said. Uncle Martin is not the kind of person who pulls someone up only to let go. But he only helps people worth helping. Whether you can make him step in depends on what you do next. I stood. After 2 steps toward the door, I stopped without turning around. Celia. You still have a chance. But not through shortcuts or tricks. It depends on whether you truly understand what you want. I opened the door and walked out. As it closed, I heard a very faint thank you behind me. Like something blocked in her throat. It was so soft I almost thought it was an illusion. But I did not stop. When the elevator descended, I looked at my expressionless face in the mirror and suddenly realized. When that special voting rights seal landed, what shattered was not only Celia's dream of being CEO. Something long suspended inside me had also shattered. Some accounts had now been settled. Some people had now awakened. As for the tangled, unclear things between Celia and me, let them sink slowly to the bottom of the river after the liquidation ended. The surface would become calm again. And whatever lay below would not need to be dug up again. On the 7th day of liquidation, Ascenteca's office was already half empty. Employees were being dismissed in batches. Compensation plans were paid in full according to labor law. So no major labor dispute arose. Several key members of the technical team were approached early by Halemark Capital and received offers from the new company. Those willing to stay signed letters of intent. Those unwilling to stay received generous compensation and left. I sat in the office that had once belonged to Celia, looking at the gray sky outside and calculating the next steps. Frank knocked and entered with a thick report. His expression was subtle. Mr. Hale. There's a situation. He placed the report before me. The Economic Crime Unit sent news today. During interrogation, Ryan Holt admitted to most of the criminal facts. But he named a new person. Celia's assistant. Paige. I frowned. Paige. Yes. Ryan claims that part of the fund transfer was handled by Paige. In his statement, he describes Paige as an accomplice, saying she knew the fund flows were abnormal and still helped him complete multiple transfers and fake contract approvals. I leaned back and tapped the armrest. I had seen Paige a few times. She was the secretary who had crashed into the conference room that day with the news. A girl in her early 20s. Honest looking. Crying when panicked. I did not believe she was Ryan's accomplice. But Ryan naming her in interrogation clearly meant he wanted to pull someone down to reduce his own guilt. Where is Paige now? I asked. She is cooperating with the investigation for now. No coercive measures have been taken. But she is under tremendous pressure. This morning, when she came to the company to hand over items, she fainted in the corridor. Frank paused. Mr. Hale. If Paige was indeed used without knowing the full truth, should we find her an attorney? I said. Pay from the liquidation reserve. And when communicating with investigators, clarify Paige's hire date and scope of authority. She was an administrative secretary. Her frequency and authority in handling financial matters were limited. Ryan wants her to take the blame. It won't be that easy. Frank nodded. Before leaving, he stopped. One more thing. Mr. Hale. Director Parker called just now. He has preliminarily reviewed the new company's registration materials and sees no issue. He asked when you plan to publicly announce the Chief Product Officer position. I was silent for a moment. Not yet. I said. Wait until Celia's situation is clearer. After Frank left, I was alone again. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the endless flow of traffic below. My mind wandered. What had Celia been doing these 7 days? Had she cooperated with the investigation as she promised? Had she called Uncle Martin? Had she? My phone suddenly vibrated. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. I answered. The other side was silent for 2 seconds. Then Celia's voice came through. Much steadier than before. Still tired and hoarse. But at least normal. Victor. It's me. I called. The number you gave me. Uncle Martin's number. I waited. He agreed to meet me tomorrow. There was a faint nervousness in Celia's voice. Like she was heading to an important exam. He said some things to me. I may need to speak with him clearly in person. Then go. She was silent again. Only the soft hiss of the call and her light breathing remained. Victor. She suddenly said. I plan to sell the apartment. After liquidation. I don't have cash on hand. The only thing I can liquidate is that apartment. I'll move back to my parents' place for a few days. Once the paperwork on your side is done, I'll sign the transfer formally. Up to you. And. She paused. Her voice lowering. I left some things in my office drawer. Your things. Small souvenirs you brought back from business trips. A few books you often read. I didn't throw them away. I packed them into a box and put it on the bottom shelf of the cabinet. I'm afraid the liquidation team might clear them out. Please tell the trust people to keep them for you. I held the phone. For some reason. My throat tightened. All right. I said. I know. Then. I'll hang up. After the call ended. I stood by the window for a long time. The phone screen went dark. Then lit again with a new message. Frank. Ryan Holt's case file has been fully transferred to the prosecutor's office. Charges will be filed soon. Then another sentence. Ms. Shaw voluntarily went to the Economic Crime Unit this morning to give a statement. Her attitude was good. The details she provided basically match what we have already found. I stared at the message for several seconds. Then I locked the screen and put the phone back into my pocket. Outside. The wind rose. The first strong autumn wind passed between buildings, lifting several yellow leaves from the ground and spinning them upward under the gray sky. Everything was proceeding step by step. The liquidation would be completed before the end of the month. The new company registration had already been scheduled. Director Parker would join as a co-founder. After Uncle Martin met Celia, he would likely make his own judgment. Ryan would spend the next few months in detention, then face court and a long sentence. As for Celia and me, the ending of this marriage would probably be that we each cleaned up the wreckage and went our separate ways. She would learn to walk again among the ruins. And I would put that seal away, locking it into the deepest corner of a safe. Perhaps one day, it would be useful again. But hopefully, that day would never come. The day the liquidation officially ended was a sunny Friday morning. Frank organized every document, signed the last confirmation letter, and walked out of the conference room with rare relief on his face. He shook my hand. Mr. Hale. Ascend Tech Incorporated's liquidation procedure has been completed legally and properly. The remaining asset distribution plan has been approved by all creditors. The dissolution filing has also been completed with the business registry. In legal terms, this company no longer exists as of today. I nodded. I felt nothing particularly strong. A company from birth to death. 4 years. Not too long. Not too short. It had once carried many people's hopes. It had also bred many people's greed. Now it had been reset cleanly to zero. Like a blackboard full of words wiped blank, waiting for someone new to write on it. When I walked out of the office building, I unexpectedly saw a familiar figure at the entrance. Celia stood at the bottom of the steps. She wore a clean white trench coat. Her hair was pinned up. She had light makeup on. Although her complexion had not fully recovered, she at least looked human again. In her hand was a paper bag. When she saw me come out, she walked 2 steps forward, then stopped a few steps away. Victor. I walked down the steps and stood before her. She handed me the paper bag. I looked inside. It was the box holding my old things. She had rewrapped it with craft paper. On the outside was a sticky note. Victor's things. I took your things out, she said. And there are some things I want to say to you. The square in front of the office building was quiet. The wind was light. Sunlight fell warmly on people. We walked side by side along the sidewalk for a while until reaching a bench by the road. She sat. I sat beside her. She took a piece of paper from her coat pocket and handed it to me. I unfolded it. It was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was a little shaky, but every stroke was serious. You don't have to read it now, she said. Read it when you go back. It's just the things I should have said 3 years ago, but was late in saying. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. Uncle Martin. I said. You met him. I did. She nodded. There was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. He told me a lot. He said several pages of my original business plan were very good. That they reminded him of himself when he first left the corporate world 20 years ago. He said he was willing to help me. But on one condition. I have to study for 2 years first. Study. He wants me to get a proper MBA. Celia laughed softly. There was self-mockery in it. And also genuine acceptance. He said my technical judgment and market sense are fine. But my fundamentals in finance, corporate governance, and legal compliance are as bad as an elementary school student's. He wrote 2 recommendation letters for me and told me to apply for next year's admission. I looked at her side profile in the sunlight. Suddenly, she seemed like a different person from the woman who had crouched crying in that dark living room 7 days ago. What do you think? I agreed. She said. I'm moving back to my parents' place tomorrow and focusing on the exam. The apartment is already listed. The agent says the market is good. So it should sell at a decent price. After part of the recovered funds from liquidation comes back. Plus the apartment money. It should cover my expenses for the next 2 years. She paused and turned to look at me. Her eyes no longer held that almost obsessive stubbornness from before. They had become much gentler. Victor. I know an apology is meaningless. But I still want to say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that for those 3 years, I lived like a blind person, seeing only the road in front of me. I'm sorry I let you sit near the door in that conference room, close to the water counter, and thought it was only natural. I'm sorry that after the company got on track, I never turned back to look. Not even once. I listened without interrupting. You don't have to forgive me, she continued. The force of that seal you dropped. I accept every bit of it. When I climb up again in the future, every step will remember how much that strike hurt. A flock of pigeons landed in the square, pecking at the ground. The sound of wings was especially clear in the quiet air. I watched the gray-white birds hop across the tiles and suddenly felt this scene belonged to another world compared with the tense conference room months ago. Celia, I said. She looked at me. The new company starts next month. The technical team kept 7 people. Director Parker will participate in management. On the product side, we temporarily lack someone who can coordinate the big picture. Her eyes brightened for a moment, then dimmed. She lowered her head. I'm not qualified. It's not that you're not qualified, I said. It's that you haven't passed the test yet. Go study first. Make up your fundamentals. If 2 years later, you graduate, those 7 technical people are still there. Director Parker has not retired. And you still want to come back to product. I looked at her. That position will be left for you. She lifted her head sharply. Her eyes instantly reddened. She opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say many things. In the end, she said nothing, only nodded heavily, with a force that almost looked like she would break her neck. But, I added, for these 2 years, you cannot contact me. Unless it is a true emergency. Don't call me. Don't message me. The road is yours. You chose it. You have to finish walking it yourself. I have already done what I should do. Celia's tears finally fell. But she did not wipe them. She let the 2 lines of tears slide down her face. Then sniffed hard and smiled. Okay, she said. Deal. She stood, straightened the hem of her coat, and extended her hand to me. I froze for a second. Then I shook it. Her palm was dry and warm. Her knuckles still had the calluses left by her habit of chewing pens. 3 years ago, I had held that hand countless times. Every time, I felt it was full of strength. Now that hand still had strength. Only, that strength was no longer baring its teeth. It had sunk down into the bones. Victor, she said, releasing my hand and taking a step back. Until we meet again. Until we meet again. She turned and walked toward the bus stop. The hem of her white trench coat moved lightly in the afternoon sunlight. She walked steadily. Every step landed firmly. She did not look back. I sat on the bench and watched her leave until that white figure disappeared into the crowd at the corner. Then I took the letter from my pocket and unfolded it. There were only a few lines on the paper. The handwriting was neat. Every word seemed written with effort. Victor. I used to think success meant letting everyone see me. Now I understand that real success is making the people who were good to you not regret having been good to you. I don't know whether I can do it. But I will try. Thank you for not letting the cup of water you asked me to pour in that conference room truly splash onto my face. Celia. I folded the letter and put it back into my pocket. The afternoon sunlight lay warmly across my shoulders. A few early fallen sycamore leaves drifted down from the branches above, spinning as they landed near my feet. In the distance, a bus roared past, stirring a dry wind. I stood and walked toward the parking lot. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Frank. Mr. Hale. The new company name has been approved. It's called Halerise Technologies. Does that work for you? I stared at the words for a few seconds. Then I replied with 2 words. It works. After sending it, I lifted my head and looked at the sky above. It was blue. Almost transparent. Suddenly, this autumn did not feel so cold anymore. That's all for today's story. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment.